What is going on with the U.S. motorcycle industry right now? Many people point to things like changing consumer preferences or even the aging rider demographic. But actually, there's something much bigger happening. The U.S. motorcycle industry isn't just facing challenges. It's confronting a systemic transformation that stretches across economics, technology, and cultural shifts. Let's take a deep dive into the data to uncover what's really behind America's motorcycle industry crisis. And we'll start with the big picture. This chart shows you the global leaders in motorcycle production and sales. For years, the U.S. has been a major player, with iconic brands like Harley-Davidson and Indian dominating the domestic market. But take a look at where the growth is happening now, in countries like India, China, and Southeast Asia. These regions have not only overtaken the U.S. in terms of production volume, but are also far outpacing American manufacturers in affordability, innovation, and consumer demand. In countries like India and China, motorcycles are a vital mode of transportation, essential for daily commutes, goods delivery, and business operations. By contrast, in the U.S., motorcycles have long been marketed as lifestyle vehicles, limiting their appeal to a niche audience. This disconnect between function and perception has left American manufacturers struggling to match the booming growth seen in developing markets. Meanwhile, global economic factors, including currency fluctuations, raw material costs, and trade policies, further widen the gap between the U.S. and its competitors. High prices, taxes, and license registration difficulties have created significant barriers for the U.S. motorcycle industry. Compared to international markets, American motorcycles often come with higher price tags due to production costs, labor expenses, and limited economies of scale. Add to that the layered tax systems, burdensome insurance premiums, and cumbersome registration processes. And it's no surprise that potential riders are deterred. Licensing, in particular, has become an overlooked barrier, with complex requirements often discouraging younger or first-time riders. Meanwhile, countries like India and China have streamlined these processes, making motorcycles more accessible to their populations and fueling their market growth. Moreover, the affordability gap between U.S.-made motorcycles and those produced overseas continues to widen, making it difficult for American manufacturers to compete in international markets. In many cases, even used motorcycles from the U.S. are less appealing compared to the affordable, reliable new models offered abroad. These challenges are compounded by the lack of incentives for first-time buyers, creating a stagnant domestic market that struggles to attract new riders. The financial burden on U.S. manufacturers is compounded by limited government support. While other countries actively subsidize their motorcycle industries to encourage growth and innovation, the U.S. offers comparatively little assistance. These subsidies help offset costs for both producers and consumers abroad, creating a competitive disadvantage for American brands. For example, streamlined tax policies and incentives in emerging markets significantly lower the entry cost for new riders, further widening the gap. In addition to direct subsidies, countries like China have invested heavily in infrastructure such as electric charging networks, which has accelerated the adoption of electric motorcycles. The lack of similar investments in the U.S. has left domestic manufacturers struggling to meet evolving consumer expectations. Without a clear roadmap for infrastructure, the electric motorcycle revolution risks stalling before it even begins. This lack of strategic vision places the U.S. at a crossroads, unable to fully capitalize on emerging trends and opportunities in the global marketplace. Let's talk about power costs. In the U.S., energy prices are among the highest in industrialized nations, especially in manufacturing hubs. Compare this to China, where lower-cost coal power still underpins much of their industrial base. For motorcycle manufacturers, energy costs are a significant part of the equation, and high U.S. energy prices make domestic production less competitive. The disparity doesn't stop there. Renewable energy sources, though expanding in the U.S., remain more expensive and less widely available than conventional energy options in China and other nations. This further increases the operational costs for U.S. manufacturers, leaving them at a disadvantage when competing on price in global markets. For example, the costs of maintaining production facilities, running assembly lines, and even transportation are disproportionately higher, cutting deeply into profit margins. These costs not only affect new production, but also make after-sales service and parts replacement more expensive for U.S. brands, further limiting their appeal in price-sensitive markets. But there's another challenge: the shift from internal combustion engines to electric motors. Historically, the internal combustion engine, the heart of a motorcycle, was a complex piece of engineering, requiring decades of expertise to perfect. U.S. manufacturers like Harley-Davidson thrived on this, creating powerful engines that became their signature. But with electric motorcycles, the game changes completely. Now, the battery is the most expensive and critical component, comprising nearly 40% of the total cost. And here's the catch: the U.S. lags significantly in battery production and technology, relying heavily on imports, mostly from China. Batteries not only represent a technological shift, but also a supply chain vulnerability for the U.S. motorcycle industry. Without addressing this dependency, U.S. manufacturers risk falling even further behind. Beyond the batteries themselves, the U.S. also struggles to compete in developing the advanced software and connectivity solutions, increasingly integrated into modern electric motorcycles, where competitors are making strides. Digging deeper into the supply chain, we see that China dominates not only in battery production, but also in the components that go into them: the anodes, cathodes, and chemicals. Over 80% of the global supply for these components comes from China. Even if U.S. manufacturers try to assemble batteries domestically, they're still dependent on Chinese imports for key materials. It's a stranglehold that's hard to break. Furthermore, the geopolitical tensions between the U.S. and China only exacerbate this issue, creating uncertainty around the future availability and cost of these essential components. This dependency also affects production timelines and profitability, putting further pressure on American brands to innovate or find alternative solutions. The challenge isn't just building batteries, it's securing the raw materials needed to make them. This issue is amplified by the global push for renewable energy, which has increased competition for the same raw materials critical for battery production, such as lithium and cobalt. And it doesn't stop there. Another factor contributing to the crisis is the aging demographic of motorcycle riders in the U.S. The industry's core customer base, baby boomers, is shrinking as younger generations show less interest in traditional motorcycles. Millennials and Gen Z are more inclined towards electric scooters, e-bikes, or shared mobility solutions. This shift in consumer preferences has left American manufacturers struggling to connect with a new audience. Meanwhile, in emerging markets, motorcycles remain a vital and affordable mode of transportation, driving sales growth abroad. The contrast is stark. While global demand for motorcycles surges, the U.S. market stagnates, caught between its aging customer base and the reluctance of younger generations to embrace traditional models. If manufacturers fail to engage these younger demographics, the long-term future of the industry will remain precarious. Programs that promote motorcycling as a cost-effective, environmentally friendly alternative to cars could be critical to reversing this trend. Additionally, Creating innovative models tailored to younger tastes could spark renewed interest in motorcycles. There's also a strategic misstep to consider. While Asian manufacturers focused on developing affordable, efficient motorcycles for the masses, American companies doubled down on high-performance, high-margin models. But now the global market is shifting towards smaller, cheaper, and more sustainable options. And the U.S. brands are playing catch-up in a race they didn't even realize was happening. This lack of foresight has left American companies vulnerable, struggling to adapt to a rapidly changing global market that prioritizes affordability, efficiency, and sustainability over brand legacy. Adapting to these shifts will require not just product innovation, but a reevaluation of how motorcycles are marketed to the next generation of riders. Innovations in lightweight designs, flexible financing options, and better integration of digital tools could help revive interest among younger consumers. Expanding partnerships with tech firms to enhance connectivity and safety features could also improve the appeal of U.S.-made motorcycles. So, what's being done? In an attempt to level the playing field, the U.S. government has introduced tariffs on imported motorcycles, particularly from Asia. But tariffs alone can't solve the underlying issues. Domestic manufacturers need to invest in electric technologies, modernize their supply chains, and rethink their strategies to appeal to younger riders. Some companies, like Harley-Davidson with its live-wire electric motorcycle, are trying to adapt, but it's a steep uphill battle. In addition to tariffs, policymakers are beginning to explore subsidies and infrastructure investments to support domestic manufacturers. However, the pace of these changes may not be fast enough to counter the rapid advancements of global competitors. Without comprehensive policy shifts, the U.S. motorcycle industry risks being left behind. A coordinated effort between government and industry is essential to address both short-term challenges and long-term goals. Strengthening alliances with international partners to diversify supply chains and reduce dependency on China could also help mitigate future risks. Ultimately, the future of America's motorcycle industry depends on its ability to innovate and compete in a rapidly changing global market. The rise of electric motorcycles, shifting consumer preferences, and the dominance of foreign manufacturers are reshaping the industry landscape. If U.S. manufacturers don't act quickly, they risk becoming relics of a bygone era, a cautionary tale for industries everywhere. This isn't just about motorcycles. It's about the ability of American industries to compete on a global stage. Without strategic action, the decline of the U.S. motorcycle industry could serve as a warning for other sectors facing similar challenges. The lessons from this crisis extend beyond transportation, providing insight into the broader implications of failing to adapt to global competition. As the world accelerates towards greener, smarter technologies, the U.S. motorcycle industry must decide whether to lead, follow, or fall behind. The time for decisive action is now, and the path forward demands innovation, investment, and a willingness to redefine what it means to ride. The question now is, can the U.S. motorcycle industry reinvent itself in time? Or will it, like the combustion engine, fade into history as the world moves on to a cleaner, cheaper, and more connected future? The answer will depend on bold decisions, significant investments, and a willingness to embrace change in the face of an evolving global marketplace. Only time will tell if the iconic American motorcycle can ride into a new era or stall on the journey ahead.